Okay, so we were talking about oxygen on hemoglobin and the hemoglobin saturation. I'm going to make a little blood vessel here, and here are my little hemoglobin bus seats here. All right. And when we talk about hemoglobin in the blood cells carrying oxygen, we talk about oxygen saturation. So if there's 10 of these in here and 5 of them are full with oxygen, then it's 50% saturated. If only one of them is full, it's 10% saturated. Okay. So the saturation of oxygen onto hemoglobin has much to do with the partial pressure. So at a partial pressure of 100 millimeters per mercury, there is basically 98% saturation. So 98% of the seats on here are full when PO2 is 100 millimeters per mercury. So if we look at this little graph, this is called the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. So oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. And this is the curve that shows the saturation of oxygen on hemoglobin at the different partial pressures. So oxygen's partial pressure. So at a partial pressure of 100, it said right here, so here's 80, here's 120, so that's about here. So at a partial pressure of 100, bring this up, we are at about, again, 98% saturated. Okay? And if we follow this curve, it shows the change in saturation at the different partial pressures of oxygen. Now, oxygen is extremely sticky to hemoglobin, to the iron. So it's not like, you know, the blood goes over to, you know, tissues that need oxygen, and they say, oh, okay, here you go, and dump off the oxygen to the tissues that need it. It doesn't really work that way. So the partial pressures, the changing in the partial pressures, is what causes the hemoglobin to become less sticky to the oxygen, and then the oxygen falls off. So this is sort of a visual of that. So at 40, if we have a PO2 of 40 millimeters per mercury, we're at about 75%. So we got 40 here. Different color. So here's 40. Over here. And it's about 75%. Okay. From 80, when we're here at 100, if you go to 80, it only goes down to 95.8, right? So at 40, which is a pretty long way from 100, it's still 75% saturated. Okay. At 26.8, almost 27, it's to 50. Okay. And 20 It's down even half of that, about 25%. So this area here, this is activity. This is exercising, okay, where your bodies are, where your muscles and cells are really using that oxygen for fuel. Okay, so this is the general curve of how, you know, sticky the hemoglobin is. But there are times when you would want the oxygen to come off of the hemoglobin easier, quicker, faster. Okay, and so this curve can be moved, adjusted to either towards the right. We can change it to go toward the right or towards the left. Okay, so if we change our curve, so we'll go here and we'll adjust it to the right. It's still going to come up like this, right? And we can also adjust it to go to the left. So why would we want to do that? To the right and to the left. Okay. Well, if it goes to the right, it just shows that the oxygen is going to jump off the hemoglobin a lot easier and a lot quicker. And to the right, we're basically changing the partial pressure in the environment enough to hold on to that oxygen more. Okay, and make it harder for the oxygen to get off. So to move to the right, one thing that will cause the curve to move to the right is exercise. And the reason why exercise does that is because exercise will increase body temperature, and that will move it to the right. It will also decrease pH. That will move it to the right. It will increase carbon dioxide. That's the waste product from metabolism to get fuel for exercise. And then another thing it will increase is something called 2,3-BPG. And 2,3-BPG is a constituent of it's a substance that's made from glycolysis. So it comes. Okay, and what it does is it sort of does the same as you know, like CO2 or being more acidic. So when it accumulates in the plasma, it causes the curve to move to the right as well as these things with it. BPG again is a constituent that comes from glycolysis, and remember, blood cells they only get their fuel from glycolysis. They don't use any of their oxygen that they move around for tissues for themselves for fuel. They only use glycolysis. So this is a product from glycolysis, and when glycolysis is being used and this increases, that also causes the the curve to adjust to the right. So those 4 things do that. So on the other side of it, so this, let me write this down. So this moves curve to the right. Okay, and then on the other side, conversely, decreased body temp, increased pH, decreased CO2, and decreased BPG, those move the curve to the left. So to the left, it is more sticky, the oxygen to hemoglobin, and here it is less sticky. So this has a name. So this process here is called the Bohr effect, where the curve moves to the right, makes oxygen less sticky, and there is more oxygen becomes more easily available. When it becomes more sticky, this is called the Haldane effect. So again, more sticky, moving to the left there. So the oxygen is less available. All right. Okay, so that's that. Just you should be able to make sure you go through this, go through the 2 scenarios, more sticky, less sticky, and how this graph describes that and the saturation there. All right, so the next thing we'll talk about is the movement of carbon dioxide through the blood.